Welcome to Recross the Paths. My name is Cade, and my guest today is Brett. Welcome, Brett.
Hey, how's it going, Kate? Thanks.
Man, it's going well. I'm thrilled to have you here. It's exciting to get to chat some. Brett and I connected originally through a rotisserie draft of his cube, the Low Country Boil.
That's right. Yep. Yeah, it was a great first go at it. Had a lot of great folks in there, got a lot of great feedback, and I got trounced thoroughly.
That's part of how we learn, I guess.
Yep.
Uh, well, we're certainly going to unpack some cube talk, but I want to begin in a unique place because as we were talking, discovered you have a background in a different game. You are or have been a pretty active Scrabble player.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so I've played Scrabble my whole life from when I was a kid, but I got into competitive Scrabble right around 2003 and was playing competitively for over a decade. I think my last competitive event was 2017. And yeah, kind of started at the bottom and worked my way up. I was at one point top 100 in the country and number one in North Carolina. And, yeah, over a decade, I guess 15 years of playing competitive Scrabble. And I was not the top of the overall ladder by any means, but it was definitely a formative part of my life for sure.
Was that something you got into through like family things, or did you just like see a Scrabble club meeting after school one day?
Yeah, so I always played with my family, but when I was in college, I used to always just study the dictionary, just read word lists, try to find interesting patterns between words. So that was just kind of a pastime. I was a bit of an odd bird, but then I met some gamer friends my senior year of college, and they were just those guys who played everything. They played competitive chess, they played competitive Go. One of them went to Russia to like study Go for years,
Wow.
and yeah, and but they were the first people I ever played Scrabble with a clock, and they had like the official board and official tiles, and they played with a clock. And I just remember playing chess with them, and they completely wiped the floor with me. But then we sat down and played Scrabble, and even though they had read the book and studied and played, I just was able to immediately, get the better of them. And so that was kind of a spark for me of like, I should figure this out. I should find more people who are into this and see where I stand.
That's pretty amazing. And something like chess as an abstract game versus something like Scrabble that is so much about flexibility, I imagine. I imagine those are very different games.
Yeah, yeah. So I never really liked chess very much. I mean, I know how to play, and liked it okay, but I never found it very interesting. I found the amount of study that was needed in order to be able to hold your ground in any sort of competitive way felt like it was sort of gate kept from, like, who knows how many thousands, millions of people might be excellent chess players. They just don't feel like putting in the time.
Hmm.
And I'd rather try to sit down and play a game where there's less there's less barriers to entry. Anyone can beat anyone at any time. Um, and there are ways for us to kind of shave off like equity here and there, ways for us to optimize and get better, and things to study and things um, to get good at. But at the end of the day, the game is just a much easier one for anyone to step into and sit down across from anybody with. And so that I really enjoy games where there is hidden information. I don't find face up games to be just my cup of tea. I like a certain amount of randomness to be inherent to the game. And I really enjoyed Scrabble because, you know, everybody's drawing seven tiles. And in many ways, it's like magic. And, you're drawing your hand. You can see a certain amount of hidden information. There's a certain amount of face up information. And you're making decisions based on all the different calculatable points of, okay, I'm going to put these tiles on the board. There's a score there. That's just the smallest bit of calculation. Then there's, okay, the value of the tiles that I'm leaving on the rack versus what is left in the pool of tiles to be drawn from. What am I putting down on the board, and what does it do to the geometry of the board? all the different ways that you can, you can play defense and offense. You can be the beat down. These are things that are just parts of the game that I really enjoyed, that I just didn't find with completely face up games in the same way.
I would have never thought of Scrabble as having a "Who's the beatdown?" question, but I could see where that would come up.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, if you're up by 30 points with 20 tiles left in the bag, you want to play as many tiles as you can to make sure that that end game comes as quickly as possible. So you're the beatdown insofar as you you're up and you want to press your advantage and you want to make sure that there's as little time left for someone to come back and get ahead of you. So if you're playing off one or two tiles at a time, yeah, you might be scoring 5 or 10 points more, but you're also giving more time for the person to catch up and get back in the game. And so you want to create low variance situations because you're the one who's in control.
That's a fascinating line of thought. I would have not put that to Scrabble. That's really cool to think about.
Yeah, and so when I was coming out of that world and into Magic, and I started playing Magic around the same time, but I made a choice fairly early that Scrabble was my thing. But when I gave up competitive Scrabble and started playing more competitive, quote unquote, competitively in Magic, I had all this way that my brain was structured around Scrabble. In the same way that like Magic players, when they go to play a new game, they're always like, "Oh, that's my library, that's my graveyard. Okay, this is upkeep."
Yeah, the overlap of terms and ideas.
Exactly, you imprint these things onto these other games because that's your structural kind of framework. And I had that just in spades with Scrabble because I'd just been playing it at such a high level for so long. And so yeah, there's so many different things about playing Magic that I bring Scrabble into.
I think that's a great segue. How does your experience with Scrabble inform your approach to designing something like a cube?
Yeah, yeah. So when I came into Magic, I played limited, just mostly budgetarily. I didn't want to invest into a deck, and I found that limited was really sparking to me in that I liked the power outliers of in limited where you've got your bombs and you've got your role players, you've got things that you begrudgingly put in your deck sometimes. But when I look across Magic, it's like, well, how do I create a way to control that, or create a way to indulge in the things that I want? Because one set might not do it for me, and you're just kind of at the mercy of it until the next set comes out. And so when I found out about Cube, I just like jumped feet first into it. It's like, oh, I'm making one of those, like no problem. And so I just had all this draft chaff around and was like, okay, well, I'm just going to put these things together. If these are all the cards that I love, let's play. And yeah, so I just tried to kind of infuse that limited feeling into my cubes. But as far as Scrabble goes, it was really about. So in Scrabble, you have 100 tiles, and there are what we call the power tiles, which is the 10 best tiles in the bag. They're the four S's, the two blanks, the J, X, Z, Q. These are the ones that are going to optimize your scores the best. But then you have all these 1 point tiles, the S's, T's, R's, E's, N's. These are the ones that are the glue pieces for playing all 7 of your tiles to get the big bonuses. So one of the things I really liked about Scrabble and that I wanted to bring into my cubes is like, yeah, I can spot you the 10 power tiles. I can give you the best tiles in the bag. You give me all the 1 point tiles and I'm going to beat you. I really liked that idea. I really want there to be these like, yeah, you've got your power outliers, but there's also tools that are around that help you kind of get past them or disrupt their game plan or whatever it is. And so like I always wanted to have cubes where, so if you look at my cubes, like, I've got stuff that just sticks out like a sore thumb. Now, Low Country Boil, my main cube, is not as much like that. It has a thinner power band, but it still has random stuff that's like low powered. That's very much role players or sideboard cards. And I'm always just a big proponent of those cards because I find them interesting, and I think that they have the ability to just come out of nowhere and create interesting games and big story moments, which is also part of the fun.
Well, yeah, and I love the idea of story. The things that happen that you don't expect, and I imagine that happens in Scrabble as well, where where you're able to string together something that wasn't expected with what was left.
Yeah, yep, exactly. I remember I had one game, and I'll always remember it. I was playing with my best friend in a tournament, and I hung a V out into the triple lane as this Hail Mary, and I bingoed Mazel Tov to the V to go out to win. And it was just very like, you have these niche little things that you can do. It's like I'm giving myself an opportunity to win. And yeah, so I try to bring those moments. And I think big story moments are why we do this. Like one of the things that I kind of push back on in the MTG Cube Talk Discord that I think a lot of folks who listen to this are probably involved in. I push back a little bit on people pretending like they're solving magic with their cubes. Like there's these ideas of like I'm optimizing, and I'm all these little things that people do to try to like create the perfect environment or whatever it is. It just the language always kind of coalesces around that type of thing, and I just always push back about around that. I like the rough around the edges. I like the weird, interesting lines. I like the sideboard cards and the things that create these moments where somebody can just out of nowhere take the game back.
Mm.
And I think that that's fun. I think everybody thinks that that's fun.
One other thing I wanted to chew on briefly, as you noted with variance, and that often comes up in terms of power bands or that comes up in terms of card balance. That's something that you don't ever hear Scrabble. I wouldn't imagine you don't hear Scrabble players complain about like, this person got a T or an X, right? Like it's not like those are just unfair tiles to have. They exist in the game, and
Right.
you just have to figure out how to maximize them.
Yeah.
Is that a sensibility that you then carry into your cube work?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I think that, the game has variance and it's not a bug, it's a feature. And if we're not utilizing that, playing into it, then this isn't universally true, but I find it true for me is that a lot of times we're creating a worse magic experience. We might be optimizing our cube or whatever that means, but cube is a social experience. It's a story. We sit down and work through every week, and I want to have people sit down and have joy, and I want their eyes to light up. I want them to find something interesting that they haven't seen before. And maybe that's just a grandiose idea on my part. But I think what it is like I don't always have the answer when I put a card in my cube. I find it interesting, so I'll just throw it in there, and I feel like the drafters will find the interesting things to do with it. Like if it's interesting to me, then yeah, it probably has a role, and so somebody's going to figure out what to do with it. Like I've had Song of Creation in my cube; it's been in there since I since I started my cube. It's my favorite card of all time. It is the most high variance, weird card of all Magic cards, and yet if you pick it up and you put it in your deck, and you're like every other card changes how you think about it when you have a card like that in your cube.
Well, so that we can dive into some specifics on that, one of the projects that you curate is the one we mentioned, rotisserie drafting, the Low Country Boil. Do
Yeah.
you want to give us an overview of that project?
Yeah, so Low Country Boy is my main cube. That's my Legacy Plus cube. It's one that just started out as like a janky house cube, just one that was every fun card that I enjoyed from all my limited playing, and then just random rares. And slowly power crept into a more recognizable Legacy, cube environment. It's pretty low curving. It has a lot of instant speed interaction. Lots of things happen on the stack. Um, but I maintain it at 450 instead of 360. Again, because I like the variance, and I think it's an interesting thing to curate around. And yeah, just try to find fun story moments for people to, you still have all the recognizable cards that everybody has in their higher powered cubes without it being fully powered. But I try to fuse in some more interesting, fun cards that I think are cool to have around.
Well, I will note as somebody who has connections in Louisiana, the imagery of the Low Country Boil is is particularly salient, right? Of putting all these
Yeah.
things together, you're mixing them in a way that enhances their flavor all at once.
Yep, yep. I'm from Savannah, and so yeah, we just turn it out on the table and dig in.
Excellent, excellent. Well, see, now we're making me hungry. Um, so, as you noted, the Low Country Boil is not a typical eternal powered cube. There are certain things that you would expect to see that you don't, and there are a number of things that you wouldn't expect to see that you do. How do you pursue the type of gameplay that you want your players to experience in that environment?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I just try to trust my gut. I try to design around the handful of cards that I just enjoy the most and what the types of things that are going to lend to whatever those cards gameplay, whatever they're speaking to. Um, there's a lot of it is, you've got your classic cards that you don't get to play anywhere else, your Snapcaster mages of the world. Um, but then, there's all these interesting limited cards that you don't have a home and will have got a home for them. Let's figure out, let's make those cards good. Let's find a place to make those cards good. So there's certain things that are everybody has in their cubes that I reject, and there's certain things that nobody has in their cubes that I embrace and I'll get loud about. But at the end of the day, I think I just trust that I like this card. I think other people are probably going to like this card.
Was Song of Creation the first card you added to this, or did it come later?
Uh, it was definitely in my first draft. It might be one of the 5 cards that were in the first draft that are still in it. And not because it's not good. It's not a good strategy, but it sure is fun. And I think that every once in a while, somebody can do the thing and do it well to the point where I'm like curating a cube that's just around Song of Creation because I think that that's a fun idea.
One of the things you noted as we were preparing for this, and something you said a little bit earlier here, was finding joy for your players. Say more about that. What is it like to solve for joy?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of spoke about it just a little bit earlier, but the pushback against the idea, I mentioned it in the Discord a little while back, but I call it like kind of the golden record cubes. People acting as if their cubes are going to be etched onto the golden record and sent out into space with
Along with the Voyager.
a beacon. Yeah, exactly, exactly, a beacon to other civilizations, and this is going to be emblematic of whatever. And I just don't think that that's how magic should be. I think solving for joy means, I think it means dynamism. I change my cube constantly. So you could play it now and you could play it in 2 months and it could be a very different cube. And so not only does it have its variants and its 450 cards, but it also changes a lot. And I think that part of that is because I draft with the same people every week, and so the joy that they get when they open a pack and they see a new card, or they've asked for a card and all of a sudden it's there, or they get to pack 3, pick 10, and they realize that there's a card in this pack. There's one of the 5 left, and oh my gosh, this plays into that thing that I drafted in pack 1. That's what I mean. Like it has that different context now and I didn't think about how that would work. Yeah, I find that to be something that those eye-opening spark joy moments I think are huge. When I used to post pack 1 pick ones into the server, I'd always ask what's the pick for joy, and I think that that's super important. Like you can pick your dual land as your pack 1 pick 1, and that's fine and good. But I think you'd much rather be taking that Snapcaster or whatever it is, to like, what, I'm doing the thing this time. Screw it. It's Tuesday night. We're all gonna die in the heat death of the universe. Like, this is it's we're here. Let's do it. Might as well. And I think more people need to do that. Spiking drafts are fun, but I think that sitting down and having a communal fun experience is way better than 3-0ing a draft.
Do you think that the frequency with which you get to draft impacts how ready you are to shake things up like that on a regular basis?
Oh yeah, absolutely. If Loco Dribble had gotten into KubeCon, I would have been a little sad to not be able to make any changes over the last month or whatever until it came out. But yeah, I think that that's absolutely the case. I used to do as many as like 80 changes a week. Um,
Excellent.
which is an absurd amount of changes. But yeah, if I didn't draft every week, it would be way different. And I would honestly probably be sadder about it. I know that there's plenty of people who don't have regular play groups, and I know that that can feel not as fun of an experience. And I can see why trying to optimize a cube might feel more appropriate for those folks. But yeah, I think that at the end of the day, I'm catering to the 15 people that I see every week more than I am to the cube gods.
Well, and it sounds like if your players enjoy that, that's the right way to do it.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think that they have a great time, and they've always been super supportive and given me tons of feedback and dropped random cards in my lap. Gifts to the cube, to try new things or to upgrade cards or to replace proxies or whatever. It's nice to have that supportive experience.
A good way to get cards into the cube too, I imagine.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So Low Country Boil is a pretty traditional in the structure of the cube environment. All five
Mhm.
colors, standard draft setup. I think we'd be remiss to not spend at least a moment talking about the Fire Swamp.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about the Fire Swamp.
Yeah, Fire Swamp is I'll just do the rundown real quick. It's a mostly Jund cube. So red, green, black is the primary colors. There is splashes of blue, and I think right now there's one white pip in the cube. But it's kind of built around the idea of like painful magic. When I started playing was like early 2000s, and a 4 mana 2/2 was just kind of par for the course. A 3 mana 1/1 flyer was just how things operated. And so I used to play with just like not draft. I used to buy like lots of 15,000 commons and uncommons off of eBay, when I first started, and just try to build decks and whatnot out of them. Just janky kitchen table magic. And I had a lot of joy with that stuff. So, this was a cube where I left CubeCon last year. I had never played a desert cube in my life. I had specifically opted out of all of the desert cubes because I didn't want to play them because I was like, oh, that sounds like a miserable experience. And literally flying home, I had the idea and then just kind of popped in my head of the fire swamp. It's like, whoa, fire swamp, that's cool. What does that look like? Okay, well, there's burn spells to be the fire part, and then there's mostly swamps. You're in the fire swamp, and then there's these beasties, and so the RUSs and stuff like that. So kind of taking that tip and just kind of running with it and trying to be as imaginative as possible. And immediately it was going to be okay. Well, now it's a desert cube, and it's not fully desert. There are swamps in the land box, but there's no life gain. There's no +1/+1 counters. There's no humans. It's a very punishing. Most things make you like discard cards. Most things make you pay life in order to do things. And so it's a very punishing environment. But, in the way that Magic is, it's also extremely fun. Just because of how different it is, how much cards get recontextualized just by kind of putting those constraints on them. I have, a ton of great feedback. You still have people who are reticent, they don't really know
Mm-hmm.
what
Mm-hmm.
the desert's going to be like, or semi desert is going to be like. But I've gotten nothing but great feedback, and it's all the places for those 4 mana 2/2s and those 3 mana 1/1 flyers, and all the cards that really you just literally can't play in a normal cube. And so yeah, this is the one that's going to CubeCon, and thanks Anthony and Andy for picking it.
That's really exciting. Have you found that your players appreciate the tensions that this environment provides?
Yeah, well, they have always have a ton of fun. I think that it's just such a janky environment. And then there's these huge power outlays. Like there's, so RUSs, they have a secret layer where they literally printed RUSs as pack rat. Pack rat is a huge outlier in this cube.
Definitely is.
But when I played pack rat last week, I played against it and I was able to beat it. I mean, that's a huge story moment in a cube that doesn't give you a lot of tools to beat things. I always have a lot of fun stories from the other folks who play the cube with me. And I think the other part is that the games are always very fast, and so Cube Night always ends just a little bit earlier on Fire Swamp Night.
Because those numbers are always going down.
Yeah, the numbers only go down. There is one piece of life gained in the cube. Actually, I guess there's two. There's Soul Canar, which
The
the,
new
the
new
the
one.
Tainted and Swamp King are both in there. And then there's also Generous Int for now that creates a food token. So there is the smallest bit of life gain. So pretty much the cube is like you're going to have even the expectations that I set you are probably going to be subverted at some point during play.
What have you found most surprising about working on an environment like Fire Swamp as compared to something more standard, if you will, like Low Country Boil?
There's two things you talk about. Joy. I think that a lot of people have a lot of memories of these cards, and it definitely unlocks a lot of that. People just, man, I haven't played with this card in 20 years, and just seeing them light up, or cards that they've never seen before, and that's just a ton of fun to be around. But the other part is just like you talk about recontextualizing. I think that it's always interesting to have these cube environments where like the bolt cube or companion cube, like all these different environments where you're just recontextualizing everything from just changing one thing. Now, obviously, Firestorm changes a lot of things, but I'm not changing the rules of Magic. I'm just changing what we're starting with at the beginning. So the no +1/+1 counters, no life gain, all that stuff. And when you do that, just it unlocks so many cards that you would just never be looking at. Your Scryfall searches don't pull up these cards. They just don't. If you're trying to find a frog sub theme, maybe, or some squirrels, or some weird rat cards, like yeah, maybe. But for the most part, you're not going to be seeing these cards in other places.
As you think about your experience working through these different environments and coming from your background in other games, what advice would you offer to other designers who are exploring their own environments?
Yeah. Yeah, you have people pop into the MTG Cube Talk Discord all the time. Um, hey, I just put together my first cube. What advice do you have? And I think the big piece of advice is just like sit down and draft. Have fun. It doesn't matter. I honestly think that you could randomly generate 360 cards from the history of Magic, and you would be able to have a draftable and fun cube environment. I think that we have the opportunity to kind of curate that, but at the end of the day, Magic is fun, and we should have fun doing it. And if you have a card that you just like are bummed that you don't get to play anywhere, put it in your cube, make it good. That is just always going to be better than trying to cater to whatever the norm is. Or if you put if you're trying to decide between three cards and you put it into the Discord server, people are going to regress to the mean, and by the mean I mean whatever that the norm is within the server of optimization or whatever. I think that at the end of the day, trusting yourself, trusting your passions, taking the cards that you enjoy and turning them into good cards in your environment is always going to be the best way to go about it. So have yourself be the final arbiter when making decisions.
That's great. I love that. So, Brett, as we're angling toward the end of our conversation here, one of my favorite questions to ask is if you could have any card printed as a promo, what card would it be? And I think I know the answer to that one, but who would you have do the illustration?
All right. So the card is, I mean, I know I talk about it all the time. It is my favorite card. But it probably is Song of Creation. I just love the card so much. And I would have DSB do the art.
There you go.
100%. 100%. He's my favorite artist.
There you go. Hard to argue with the original art already, but also I don't know that you can beat a DSB alter.
No, no way. Some of my prized possessions are little DSB doodles, and I have the pleasure of being able to hang a little sketch of his on my wall as well. So, yep, he would definitely be the one.
Well, outstanding. Well, Brett, this has been a treat for me. What a joy to go through these things with you. If folks want to learn more about Low Country Boil or perhaps explore the fire swamp for themselves, where should we point them?
Yeah, so first of all, thank you so much for having me. This has been a ton of fun. You're such a generous interviewer. You're such a great person, and I definitely appreciate your presence in our community. And more people should be listening to your pod. But yeah, so I'm AI Brady on everything. If you're in Discord, on Twitter, I'm the real AI Brady, I believe, but I'm not on there very much. But yeah, AI Brady everywhere.
Excellent. And we'll have links for all that below in case folks need to follow there.
Absolutely.
Brett, thank you so much again for your time. Looking forward to connecting as opportunity arises in the future, and perhaps we'll get burned in the swamp together.
Yep, absolutely. And I guess I'll see a lot of you folks in KubeCon in a month.